Good morning，大家早上好。我的名是P.S. Tang，中文名是还没有上来看一下啊。我的中文名是邓平山，是邓小平的邓，邓小平的平，然后孙中山的山，所以那是我的名。因为我是自小是英语教育的，所以我的中文，尤其是这个什么呢？technical 这方面的讲得不好，我还是要用英语来发表。So today, this morning, I will be presenting some of the experience and finding on 5G private network applications, deployment experience, and especially the challenges. And as Mr. Zhao just mentioned, as operator, vendors, and the industrial community, we really need to work together to overcome some of these challenges. Because the big problem for 5G is the industrial adoption of 5G is still very slow and doesn't give us the potential of 5G. So we need to overcome the challenges to achieve the objective. Yeah. Very important, what I'm presenting today is from the work that has carried out in 2024, where GTI, which I represented GTI as a steering committee member, worked with GSMA, especially the industrial group, and the 5G ACIA. Yeah, so we have participated in several of their meeting and discussion. So what I'm presenting next is about some of the summary and the findings. Yeah. I think first and foremost, most of GSMA industrial group, 5G ACIA, and GTI, we must recognize some of these challenges. The number one concern of big industrial and the big enterprise is about cybersecurity. That's why they are very reluctant to give up control of a lot of their devices and sensors, especially in the OT, they call it operating technology space. They want it to be totally isolated from the internet and totally isolated from the public network. Sometimes it's not the technology that our technology for cybersecurity is not good. It is the many, many years of their mind, what you call that, their mindset. Yeah? They wanted total control. They don't want anyone to control their operation. So it's very important to understand that. So there's a gap between the industry and the mobile operator. Yeah? They want to have control of everything on OT. And by the way, they are okay to use public network for their ICT, yeah, but not their OT. Another gap we realized there is a lot of misunderstanding of what 5G can do. Yeah? The industry vertical, many of them don't realize that eMBB, to achieve 10 gigabit per second, you need to use the millimeter wave. Yeah? I think the industry is assuming any 5G can do 10 gigabit, which is wrong. Yeah? And then didn't realize your MMTC, your NB-IoT, or now we talk about passive IoT, are actually a different network, which require different frequency spectrum. Yeah? A lot of the industry also misunderstand that. So we need to educate the industry verticals so that they can understand what 5G is about and what URLLC, which a lot of the big industry needs, are still very challenging. Yeah? And another thing that I think is education to the vertical industries is that we do have a lot of public 5G solution, slicing, mobile edge computing, or we can have dedicated private 5G where we give them allocated, dedicated frequency spectrum and even have a small core network behind their firewall. So I think the industry need to understand these are all the various combinations that can help them to address their problem. Yeah, so a lot more education is needed. And very important, I think a lot of our vendors, when I talk to them, and a lot of the vertical industries, they wanted to have more frequency spectrum. Yeah? And actually, surprisingly, some mobile network operators said that, please don't give me any more spectrum because it's going to cost me a lot of money, and I'm not sure how to make money from this spectrum for private 5G. Because there is no business model, business references for the financial what I call that simulation, to say that if I pay $100 million for this 100 megahertz of spectrum, when can I generate the returns in a private network for the industry? Yeah? So I think there is no maturity and no references for business yet. So we are encouraging network, or rather frequency spectrum, can be given out on a location-based pay-per-use, rather than right now, most regulators around the world will allocate the spectrum to 1 or 2 or 3 mobile operators and charge them a lot of money for the spectrum, and then hopefully they can generate returns. Yeah? And lastly, when you talk to some of the 5G ACIA people, they will tell you that there are a lot of smaller factories, smaller industry that require small private 5G, but they need it to be very simple to use, very low cost, so that it justify investing in private 5G. So these are some of the challenges that we gathered with the 5G ACIA and with the GSMA Industrial Group. I think this chart simply say that there is a gap between the vertical industry, which is on the top, because they are saying that it's too complex to design 5G network, too complex to deploy, and it is too expensive to maintain and operate the network. And partly because the vertical industry doesn't have all the radio frequency network management expert like the telecom industry has. Yeah? So I think for the telecom industries, the vendor and the operator, we should combine our effort to simplify the design, to use AI if possible, to automate the network design, to have private 5G in the box in terms of deployment, and to be able to have simplified operation and maintenance processes for private 5G. Because once you achieve that, hopefully private 5G can be as simple as Wi-Fi in a box. And that's what the vertical industries are asking for. Yeah? So for vendors and mobile operators, it's good to be able to combine our knowledge, make it into a private 5G in a box for a lot of the vertical industry. I show this slide to a lot of 5G ACIA and also the GSMA industry group to highlight China Mobile. In China are using, that's a luxury, 100 megahertz of 4.8, 4.9 gigahertz for private network, and 160 megahertz of 2.6 gigahertz spectrum for public network. And many of the use cases in China that I was told combine 260 megahertz of spectrum to serve the big vertical industries. Yeah? So it's a combination of private 5G and public 5G. And actually there's one more layer, the sensor IoT network as well. Yeah? So a lot of the big industries would need that. Yeah? And I guess China Mobile actually differentiate that 3 levels. You have your premium level, which is private slicing, dedicated, which is private slicing with mobile edge computing, and then the VIP level of 5G service, which is a dedicated spectrum, dedicated network for the industry. And I think with that, we also share with them that China Mobile has many, many 5G commercial use cases for the industry. I think I was told it's 30,000. I think Mr. Gao, yesterday, the EVP of China Mobile, mentioned 40,000. Yeah? So I think the number is increasing. But one very surprising knowledge that I gained with 5G ACIA, ACIA is telling the world there are only 1,200 private 5G networks in the world, which is a very big gap between how ACIA report private 5G and what GTI, using China Mobile number, are saying we have 30,000 5G commercial use case in industry. So I think we need to come together to define what you mean by private 5G, dedicated spectrum use, or is it controlled by a mobile network operator, or is it controlled by the industry? But 5G ACIA telling the world that only 1,200 private 5G is a very bad image for private 5G, yeah? Because we want to tell the world private 5G is growing. Yeah? So we need to help to change 5G ACIA on this. So these are a lot of the example China Mobile has claimed. They are into 35 industry sectors, 30 to 40,000 use cases. Yeah? So we need to share this with the rest of the world, yeah? Which is not happening in such a big number yet. And this slide is from one of our vendors to say that they do have 3 levels of 5G for the industry. It can be just an entry level with just slicing, the same, slicing with mobile edge computing where you localize the data, or using a dedicated private 5G. Yeah? So what I meant is a lot of the big vendors, those sitting in this room, and maybe the second tier, already have such a technical solution. But it's how to promote this to the vertical industries, both in China and outside China. So the message that we are sharing is most big industry would benefit if they use both private 5G and public 5G together. Yeah? Because private 5G would let them have direct control of their OT devices, which is a mindset thing. As I say, it's not a technical challenge. But in the mindset, they still want to control their own OT devices, at least for the next 3-5 years before they get comfortable with private 5G. And they want to basically have more customized integration of the interconnection to their existing ICT and their operation. And they also need to have more terminals, more devices, OT devices especially, that can be connected directly to private 5G. So those are all the benefits that private 5G provide, but most of the big enterprise also need public network access. Yeah? This will be for their mobile phone, because their employee use mobile phone as a tool, and they would use public network for most of their ICT needs. Yeah? So combining these two would be a big benefit to the industry. In fact, we were suggesting one way to look at it: when you deploy private network in a big factory, like in the airport, you should think about combining it as a neutral host or as part of the infrastructure for public network. Because if you build both public and private together, it saves a lot of money. Yeah, and you actually bring all this benefit together for the particular industry verticals. So I'm sharing with you now what we have presented to 5G ACIA from GTI. And these are all from our vendors and our operator members. First is to highlight that, resolve one of these ports that we have deployed, private 5G, and you can bring along a lot of benefits. Yeah? So it's a very simple example that we explained to 5G ACIA that this is already done, numerous ports in China. Yeah? And these are another example. In this case, we are talking about the Ningbo port, where deploying 5G and help out in the ship arrival, ship to key to yard, and yard to logistics center, where you can automate the process. That they have actually achieved improvement of 20% efficiency and reduce the operating cost by 41 million yen a year. Yeah. So all these are what we need to present to the industry. Yeah. Besides technology, we must be able to show the business case. How much investment, how long is the return of investment, and what are the improvement on econometrics term. Yeah. Just like vendors, when you're selling your product, you need to be able to convince the end user what are the benefits for them to adopt, in this case, private 5G. And you give them proven and tested business case that happened somewhere else in the world. So all these are examples. We need both our operator members and our vendor partners to give us more successful use cases with detailed econometrics so that we can use it to convince the vertical industries. These are just more examples of the port. In this case, I think it mentioned in Ningbo as well, some of the delay or latency, bandwidth, and reliability requirement. Yeah, so these are a lot of technical detail on top of the econometrics detail that we need to show. Yeah. This is another example from one of the vendors, and I like this particular use case because it actually goes into a simple, small, smart mining use case that highlights their requirements and the pain points, what type of problem is solving, and the application scenario. Yeah, this particular use case is in a very small open phase coal mine in Inner Mongolia. Yeah? So they highlight, in the case, they use autonomous vehicle in the mining area that will enhance the safety. They highlight how it increase productivity, reduce operational costs, and at the same time gather data so that they can make better data-driven decision making. Yeah? And from there, they actually show how the deployment is being set up. All the autonomous vehicle, they will have 4 cameras, 2 GPS or GNSS, 4 millimeter wave radar, and 5 LiDAR. So these are some of the solutions, then they detail down how they deploy, yeah, in that particular location. And this even show their RF network design, both on the coverage, upload and download rate. And by the way, this company claim the network design is done by AI, so it doesn't need the engineers to intervene in the RF network design. Yeah? So they want to simplify the network design and then simple deployment in this open phase mine. Yeah? And lastly, they will show you the ROI for using the driverless truck in this smart mining example, comparing a manned truck solution versus a driverless truck. So in this case, they show each driverless truck they deploy, they can actually generate additional 100,000 revenue per year. Yeah? So if they are deploying 4 of these driverless trucks, they can increase $500,000 per year in terms of increased revenue. Yeah? So these are the type of use case presentation that I was looking for the other industries. Yeah? So with this, it's much easier for us to talk to miners, small mining operation anywhere around the world, because this is already a proven case, and simple to understand, the return on investment, simple to deploy, and simple to operate. Yeah. And as a summary of the discussion with 5G ACIA, as I mentioned, I think yesterday the Siemens presenter also mentioned, the industries are not adopting because they don't understand enough on the cost and benefits. And they don't even know enough. There are multiple versions of public 5G and private 5G. Yeah, so there is a lot more use cases that we need to share with the industry vertical so that they can convince themselves to adopt 5G in their operations. Yeah, so that's challenge number 1. As I mentioned, we need more frequency spectrum. Yeah? For people who know 5G ACIA, at one time, they do not want to be involved in GSMA or GTI activities because they want the frequency spectrum for private network to be given to the industry. Yeah? And of course, in GSMA or in GTI, we want the spectrum to be given to the operator. Yeah? So there is a big difference of opinion. But nevertheless, we have to convince them if it is frequency band for the OT device, it can actually be owned by the industry, like in Germany, in US and some of the Western countries, or it can be owned by MNO, yeah, like in the case for China. MNO owning the spectrum doesn't cause any problem. But ACIA is okay for ICT spectrum. Yeah, that can be owned by MNO. So industry has no problem about MNO owning the frequency spectrum for ICT, public network. Yeah, they're only one for their OT. Yeah, I think that's the mindset both sides need to learn and be able to work together. Yeah. And we need to simplify the private 5G design. A lot of the vertical industry guy, I think as mentioned by Mr. Xiao as well, they don't have the RF engineering know-how, yeah? The network operation know-how. So they find 5G too complicated. Yeah? Even if, in the case of Germany, even you give them the spectrum, they cannot deploy, they cannot manage, they cannot operate a private 5G efficiently. So I think Germany, they are already starting to work with people like Deutsche Telekom, Telefonica in Germany, to be their network deployment and operating partner. Yeah? So I think that's what's happening. Yeah? So combining the strength and knowledge of both would be very useful. And we need more system integrator. need more solution platform provider besides the network, besides the operators like us, because every case requires integration of their application into their ICT and their business platform. So it's not that simple as having the spectrum, having the network. It's how to integrate with their existing business platform. Yeah. So we need more OT devices as well. So lastly, 2 more slides is talk about what are the action items GTI need to have to promote private 5G to the industry. Yeah, this one will need help and contribution for everyone. We need to work with our solution partner, our vendor, and our operator members to really compile detailed, successful use cases for the various industry sectors. We need the detail of the end-to-end solution platform, the system integrators, what are the type of integration work is needed, and who are the equipment vendors. And we need to elaborate the econometrics, means the business model of private 5G, how we can help them to reduce their operation costs, improve efficiency, and what type of return of investment they are expected to get. And we need to continue, GTI, to engage global organizations. I think ATIA is a new one today, yeah, so we want to work with more. 5G ACIA, GSMA, including we are starting to talk to some of the telecom consultancy company as well, to also educate them that combining private and public 5G maybe is a good way forward to address the vertical industry. And to convince regulators how to allocate more frequency spectrum for private 5G, and how to influence ITU. I think yesterday, the spectrum seminar yesterday, I think there are a lot of talk about from the vendor, what are the spectrum requirements going forward. But none of them are talking about spectrum requirement for private 5G. I think we need to start thinking for private 5G for the industry, rather than thinking about spectrum for consumer usage only. Yeah? So I think we have to start from within, from our industry itself, to start thinking about private network. So lastly as well, GTI are open to be invited by vendors or the operator elsewhere, so that we can go together with you to convince your local regulators on allocating more spectrum and give you more supportive regulatory framework, so that your industry can adopt private 5G more successfully. Yeah. So these are some of the actions we need to do. And working with ACIA and GSMA, we are already have in plan that we want to maybe work on a spectrum report about which frequency spectrum has been allocated in which country, which spectrum has been used by the industry in which country, and more importantly, as I said just now, what are the spectrum resources needed for the next 5, 10, 20 years for private network for the vertical industry. Those are the work I think GTI we cannot do alone. We probably want to work with ACIA, maybe GSMA, but GSMA's interest is for operators only, rather than for the industry. So ACIA would be very good to work with. And we need to influence the regulators. And the fourth point is to compile successful use cases. And I want to be able to have our vendor giving us the number of private 5G deployment your company has gone through, and how to convince ACIA is more than 1,200 private network around the world. There's a big gap there. So we need to overcome that misunderstanding or misconception by 5G ACIA. And maybe some sort of certification services that we need to work with. I think yesterday, University of Malaya said they want to be a certification center, but we need more to certify some of the private 5G applications as well. I think with that, I will finish my presentation, and we look forward to collaborate with all the operators in this room, all our vendors or solution partners, to provide more use cases, so that we can promote 5G adoption in the industries. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Deng Pingshan. Okay, is that right? Okay. Any short question? Okay.
Just one small comment. recently we have a Chinese discussion about the challenges of private 5G.
Right.
And people are talking about why the industry, enterprise equipment, they didn't embedded 5G in their equipment like other, like Wi-Fi and other technologies. What's that reason? So I think maybe the use cases is not so important right now in China because, like you said, China Mobile already developed
Yes.
40,000 use cases. So
Right.
maybe use cases is not important. But I think maybe the private 5G spectrum harmonization about the globally harmonization is important, like you said. So I think maybe we can push that. We can have a global harmonized private 5G spectrum and that the equipment vendor can produce their product. Yeah, that's what comment.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Victoria.
Yeah,
for your
thank you for
Thank you.
excellent presentation
Thank you,
as
thank you.
always.
Yeah. Actually, I think one of the point ACIA member was mentioning, it's not that, not just any devices that have 5G, they especially say it's the OT devices, the operating technology devices. Things that are used in the forklift, things are used in the car, or telemetric in the port. A lot of those OT devices are actually very old. Yeah, they are still wired Ethernet. At most is Wi-Fi. Yeah, so they don't have a place for a 5G module. Yeah, so you need to have more native. We call it native connectivity on some of the OT devices. Definitely, it's one of the big challenges as well. Yeah, so the industry will adopt that. Yeah, but I do agree. We need to improve on the spectrum. Yeah. Like I said, China is using 4.8, 4.9, China Mobile, and maybe yesterday they also mentioned about 4.7, 4.8. So there are more spectrum given for the industry, but 4.7, 4.9 are not allocated out in the whole Southeast Asia and maybe whole Africa, whole of Latin America. Yeah. To me, maybe that is maybe a potential good spectrum to use. But I think someone also mentioned that could also be used for satellite, fixed satellite services. Yeah? So I think ITU is a bit difficult to allocate the 4.7, 4.9 for private 5G. But more study is needed. But I think that would be a very potential band to use.
Okay, thank you, Pierce Tang. Many thanks.